Welcome back, Lifespan students. I want to talk to you a little bit about gender as we finish up Chapter 5. First of all, let's just refresh our memories a little bit from some things that we've talked about when we talked prenatal development and maybe you learned in general psychology. One thing to keep in mind is that as babies are developing in the womb, they are developing in sex-differentiated ways. Between 6 and 12 weeks, the baby undergoes a period of physical sex differentiation where the presence of testosterone causes the gonads to develop into testes and penis, and the absence of testosterone causes the gonads to turn into ovaries and vagina. So physical sex differentiation is happening between 6 and 12 weeks. Well, are there other ways in which boys and girls are different? Well, yeah, the brains are different. You might remember that also from general psychology. Well, there are 3 different times of sex differentiation of the brain, 2 times prenatally and 1 time postnatally. 12 to 18 weeks is time 1. 34 to 41 weeks prenatally is the second time when testosterone is flooding the brain and masculinizing it, or testosterone is not flooding the brain and the brain is feminizing. And then also 0 to 3 months postnatally, again, we see either an increase in testosterone or not, depending on sex. So the testosterone is released by the male fetus, which masculinizes the brain. And when testosterone is not released, the brain feminizes. Too little testosterone in the male fetus can result in either a child who develops a homosexual orientation or possibly a child who develops gender dysphoria, where he is a boy genetically and looks like a boy but feels inside like a girl. Too much testosterone in a female fetus can result in either a homosexual orientation or possibly gender dysphoria as well. So that's kind of the background for this. Let's talk about differences in play, which we were just talking about a few minutes ago, and then the development of gender roles. So by the time children are 2 to 3 years old, they really want to play with the same sex. They resist adults' encouragement to play with the opposite sex, and this continues and really even increases through pre-adolescence. Do boys and girls sometimes play together? Sure, of course they do. Is this the universal time when boys and girls think the other gender has cooties? Well, yeah, we all know that to be true. By the time they hit 12, they're hitting puberty and they start to take an interest in the opposite sex again. So why would this be? Why would you not want to play with boys if you're a girl or with girls if you're a boy? Well, it's because their play styles are really quite different. Boys tend to prefer rough and tumble, competition and dominance type of play. Girls are more cooperative, pro-social, and conversation-oriented. Here's one of the differences between these two. Girls are more enabling. Their acts, their remarks, their conversations support others and sustain interactions, okay? As they're playing, they're trying to coordinate their ideas and their plans and their goals so that they can be in harmony and sustain that interaction. Boys are what's called constricting. They're doing that rough and tumble play. It's all about dominance. They want to see who's going to be the victor, who's going to be on top. They exaggerate, they threaten, they contradict each other. My children, Ethan and Hannah, have friends, Colin and Kaylee, brother and sister. They come over. They're all about the same, they're the same age as each other. And you know what happens? The boys either find the Nerf guns and have a Nerf gun fight inside the house and fight each other to see who wins, or they go outside and find some sticks and play sword fighting and see who wins. And they exaggerate and they threaten and they contradict each other, and it's all about who's going to end up on top. The girls also go outside and find some sticks, but they don't turn those sticks into weapons. They turn them into either people who then proceed to play with each other, and they tell stories, and they coordinate their ideas to tell these long, involved stories where their sticks are people, or they use those sticks more often, frankly. They find some buckets, and they start to play baking, and they use the sticks to dig up dirt and leaves and all kinds of things like that, and they use it as a spatula, and they mix all their ingredients together and they bake bread. This is the game that they play. This is enabling. This is cooperative. They are talking to each other, coordinating with each other. Okay, you get the leaves and I'll get the dandelions, and we're going to put that together and make a really nice bread. Okay, they're trying to sustain that interaction. Is this stereotypical? Sure. Is this also true? Yeah, it is. Are all children like this? No, of course not. But this does tend to be true in general. Now, why would this be? Well, we could look at this from an evolutionary psychology standpoint. Possibly being constricting, being dominant is a good way for a boy to spread his seed. Because remember, from an evolutionary perspective, the whole point is to procreate and then have your procreations procreate. Well, what is the male's best evolutionary strategy? It's to spread his seed far and wide. How does a male typically attract a female? It's often by having a high rank. How do you get a high rank to get that access to more mates? Well, you be dominant. You become the dominant one. Well, what about females? Their best evolutionary strategy is not to spread their seed far and wide and get pregnant as often as possible. Their best strategy is, let me get pregnant and let me invest myself in this child to raise this child up for 12 years, 15 years, whatever it takes, until they can also procreate. Okay, so if you have that intensive labor that you need to do to get your offspring off into puberty, you're going to need a lot of help. And if you need a lot of help from your fellow people in your group, especially the other women, you better be really good at sustaining interactions, at supporting others, at enabling, at cooperating, right? And this is especially true when you think about the fact that females typically and traditionally have left their own community to join their husband's community. And when you do that, cooperation is going to save the day. Dominating and contradicting other people is not going to get you the welcome and the help that you need. How are parents involved in children's play? There's three roles that parents often take. One is as playmate. They may scaffold the child's play and make it more sophisticated. I hope that word scaffolding rang a bell for you. You should immediately be thinking Vygotsky. Remember, Vygotsky thinks of children as little apprentices who are learning as they are in context with a more experienced other. Remember his terminology. So what's scaffolding? Well, it means that we support the child's play by raising the level just a little bit, offering just a little bit of help to level it up. Remember, Vygotsky says that what a child does in coordination with somebody today, he will do on his own tomorrow. So maybe you're playing kitchen with your child, and your child is just sort of stirring things in pots, and that's as far as they've gone. Now you come in and you say, oh, let's set the table, and then we can eat the food that you just made. And next thing you know, next week, the child's setting the table on his own as he plays. You can also be a social director, arranging play dates and official play activities, setting up mommy and me classes, setting up play dates with a friend. And you could also be a coach. This is my favorite one. We can help children learn the social skills it takes to be a friend and to be in play with other people. So you see that your child is having a hard time breaking into play groups. Maybe he doesn't quite know how to join a group that's already playing. Then at home, you talk with him and work with him and maybe play act and role play how to break into a play group. Just busting in and saying what your own ideas for the play are typically tends not to go very well. But what does tend to work well is to sort of join the group, get inside the circle, and start doing what they're doing, and that tends to work quite well. Well, we can coach our children from the background on how to do that. All right, let's talk about gender roles and gender identity. What our stereotypes about males and females are, and does that actually map on to actual differences between boys and girls? How do young children learn their gender roles? Well, first of all, let's understand what a gender role is. It's a social role. It's cultural guidelines about how we should behave, especially with other people. Gender roles are one of the very first roles that we learn. We very quickly realize that our world is not gender neutral. By 18 months, girls and boys are already in training in their gender role. Girls will look longer at toys that are gender stereotypical, such as dolls or pots and pans and kitchen stuff, and boys will look longer at male stereotyped toys such as tools and cars and trucks. 4-year-olds know a lot about gender stereotypes, about what girls are supposed to be like and what boys are supposed to be like. For example, preschoolers believe that boys are physically aggressive but girls are verbally aggressive. Is this true? It is true. It turns out that that's not just a stereotype, that's actually true. Later, as they get a little bit older, they continue to develop more and more complex ideas about these gender roles. They believe that males will have more prestigious jobs, having more money and greater power. They start to believe that boys are strong and dominant, whereas girls are emotional and gentle. But this is a little bit softened and tempered by the fact that they seem to understand that these are guidelines, these are suggestions, these are not necessarily binding. A girl could be strong and dominant, a boy could be emotional and gentle, a girl could have a prestigious job. How do boys and girls actually differ? Well, if you remember your Gen Psych, you'll remember hopefully verbal ability and spatial ability and math are the big topics. Are girls more verbal than boys? Yes. Are women more verbal than men? Yes. Girl toddlers have larger vocabularies, they read, write, and spell better later, they have fewer language difficulties. It is true that girls and women speak far more words in a day on average than your average boy or man. What about math? We often think of men as being dominant in math, and that has been traditionally true. However, we should know that the gender gap has diminished in the past 25 years, and it's expected to go away altogether. So while it is believed that the verbal ability is actually a hardwired thing in the brain, it's believed that the math difference is cultural and not hardwired. Another one that is in fact hardwired, we think, is spatial ability. From infancy onwards, boys more accurately and rapidly solve visual spatial problems. You ever try one of those problems where maybe you have to take some kind of 3D object and you have to mentally rotate it 90 degrees and figure out which picture it matches up with? That's spatial ability. Are you good with maps or not? That's spatial ability. Can you build furniture from a box with some instructions? That's your spatial stuff. Boys and men tend to be better at that. Okay, let's think about some social differences between boys and girls. Girls are more compliant. They're more likely to accept adult directions and to accept social influence from their peers. Again, remember that girls are valuing enabling behaviors. They are valuing harmony and allowing interactions to continue smoothly. So they are more open to social influence. Are boys more aggressive? Yeah, physically they tend to be more aggressive. By 17 months, boys are more physically aggressive than girls are, and this tends to be true across cultures, making it more likely that this is an inborn natural thing. If girls are going to be aggressive, it's probably going to be relational. Gossiping, ignoring, rumors, that kind of thing is the relational aggression that girls are more likely to do. Are girls more sensitive than boys? Yeah, it turns out they are. It turns out that boys experience emotions more intensely when they're babies. Boys experience them more intensely as they're babies. But as girls and boys grow older, girls learn that they can express their emotions. People talk to them about their emotions more than they talk to boys about these things. Of course, these differences tend to be a little bit small, and of course we're talking group differences here, individual boys and girls may be different. How do girls and boys learn these stereotypes? Parents tend to be warm and encouraging to both boys and girls, but for sure parents do tend to model and reinforce appropriate gender type behaviors. More likely to offer a girl a doll, more likely to offer a boy rough and tumble and blocks and mild aggression. These are results that support the idea that we learn these things through interaction with others and seeing what others are doing. Finally, children learn their gender roles in context with their peers. It sharpens their sense of gender group membership. It heightens the contrast between what do girls do and what do boys do. And of course, the peers are going to say, hey, you're not supposed to play like that. This is especially true for boys. When boys step into a girl type role, they tend to get socially punished for this more than girls who do the opposite. All right, that's it on gender. That is concluding our chapter 5.